Going to be doing some body work on the big truck this week. Let's see, we'll start right here. This mirror is coming through. This side here, same thing. This job here I did a few years ago, just a quick patch, because this was all coming apart. Got hit by a deer and I pieced it back together for the most part, but apparently the shock broke loose the glue that they hold these panels together with, and this started coming apart, and I had to get some of that glue and then take this, spread it apart, get the glue in there, clamp it together. And because it was coming apart and I didn't fix it right away, the damage was kind of working its way up into here and all across here. And when that deer situation happened, there was more damage from under the headlight and across here that I was aware of. I didn't know about all of this at the time. Replaced this bezel and repaired this area here, which is some of the paint's flaking away, because that was probably 10 years ago. Anyway, I did this maybe 5 years ago, and I just did a quick patch job that I didn't really care what it looked like. So I'm going to redo that. What else am I going to redo? I'm probably going to, okay, this thing here, I had to take it off to work on the exhaust. I changed an exhaust pipe that runs under the cab, and I didn't put it back on right. I gotta redo that. And this area down here that's bent, those steps down there that's kind of crooked, I'm gonna see if I can do something about that. And let's go to the other side. This area here got torn off by a tire that blew up through a tread, but it's not the first time. The first time I did it, I rebuilt all of this by hand. I taped pieces of cardboard and plastic underneath this, laid all new fiberglass on it, finished it off and painted it. And then a few years later it happened again. And when it happened again, I just went by the junkyard. We don't have one here. It was about 200 miles away, the junkyard is, or 150 miles away, something like that. When I was over that way, driving over the road, I bought a section. I had them cut a piece off of another truck. I've got that piece in my shop. I never did put it on. My options are to either put that on, take all of this stuff apart, put that on, or to just go on ahead and rebuild this again. And I'm thinking that's what I'm going to do, is just rebuild this again. And I think it would be more beneficial to viewers to see how I do that. Now this area right here, we don't have direct sunlight on it at the moment, but this is an area that I had to fix probably 13, 14 years ago when another truck pulling out of a dock, when I was hauling van trailers back then, his doors came unhooked and his door got caught on this grab bar as he was pulling out of the dock, and it tore the grab bar, ripped the aluminum, pulled the steel framework on the inside, pulled that out. And so I redid all of that and fixed it, and then that's what this pink colored body filler is here. And the reason it's doing this is because I had company logo signs on here, and when I changed companies 7 years ago, a friend of mine knew that I was changing and pulling my signs off, and he offered me a can of something. He says, "This is good stuff for pulling those signs off." He says, "It's made for that." But I couldn't read the label on it or the directions, so I thought, well, okay, I'll try it. I'll just spray it on there. And the labels, all the printing on it was faded. It was sun faded. It was obviously out in the sunlight somewhere. Well, it turned out to be paint stripper. So it took the sign off and the paint, and I never did fix it. So I'll be going through this again and grinding all of these peeled areas down smooth and feathering it out, and then building it back up with filler again, and then going back down again. And the tricky thing is we got to work between all these rivets. So, but we'll get her done. So I'm going to get that spot too. And back in the front here, I'll probably touch up some of these things here that are peeling off and flaking away. This has been repaired before, but the thing is, you can't just put regular body filler on this. Whatever kind of fiber stuff this material is in here, it is not fiberglass. It's something else, some kind of fiber composite or something, I don't know. But regular body filler will not stick to it. The common nickname Bondo. Bondo's just a brand name. It's not an individual product. Anyway, the body filler does not stick to this. It will stick to fiberglass, and fiberglass will stick to this, so I have to use fiberglass on it first, and then I can only use the body filler over the fiberglass as long as I'm not right on the fiber that this hood's made of. Anyway, this is the remains of the paint job I did about 14 years ago, whenever it was that I got hit on the side there by that other truck. And it still shines, and there's no clear on it. It's just straight enamel. I did paint the whole truck, everything except the roof and the doors. And I didn't paint this side here. I painted from this line down. So this flaw up in here, someone else did that. I might address that too this week. I don't know, it just depends on time. It's going to be hot, and it's going to have some rain. They're calling for about 3 days of rain later this week, so, and we're going to be up in the 90s every day, so I don't know how much of this I'll get done. We'll see. I'm going to go over some of the supplies that I'm going to be using for this body work, and some of the tools, and I'm going to do it in sections because there's so many that it'd just be a hassle to lay it all out in one place and get it all done. Besides that, I haven't bought the paint yet that I'm going to be using. Anyway, I am going to be using some cheap primer, and this is not to finish the job. You'll see what I'm going to be using that for. I got 3 cans of that. I probably am only going to use 1, but it's always handy to have some extra primer around for when I do welding work or whatever. And then I got some high-priced primer. Now these are like $4 a can, and these are like, I don't remember, $15, $18 a can. This is what I'm going to paint on. But this is for when I'm sanding down the body work, and I'm not completely sure that have it sanded down as far as I want it to go yet. I put a real light coat of primer on it, and then I real lightly sand it down very carefully, and it lets me know where my high and low spots are. So that's basically what that's for. You don't have to use that, but it's since I'm doing a video on it, I'll go on ahead and do that to show how we do that. This is it's called Bondo Hair, and the reason it's called that is because its brand name is Bondo. Contrary to popular belief, body filler is not Bondo. Bondo is a brand name, just like this. It's a brand name. All of this stuff came from Amazon, and the best price that I could get was on the Bondo brand. The fiberglass filler is also Bondo brand. This is not Bondo. None of this is Bondo. Bondo's a brand name. Here's a different brand of this long strand fiberglass filler. It's called, it's made by Evercoat, and they call it kitty hair. That's a popular nickname for the long strand fiberglass. This is the same product, just a different brand. There might be some slightly differences in the chemical makeup of it, but it wouldn't be much. It'd be pretty much the same thing. This is the same body filler you get no matter what brand you buy. It's the same stuff. This is the lightweight body filler, half-gallon can, And this stuff does not last forever. It goes bad. It gets hard to work with if you let it sit for too many years without using it. So since I haven't done body work in a number of years, I threw away a lot of the old stuff I had. This can here is fairly full and it's still workable. In fact, I'll open this up and show what's going on in there. And it's still workable. And you just use regular auto body hardener with it. This half-gallon can came with a full-size tube of hardener. I ordered an extra tube of hardener because you never know. In this hot weather you don't normally need extra hardener, but in cold weather you do. The amount of hardener they give you won't quite get you through in cold weather because you got to mix it richer for it to set up. Anyway, this stuff's workable. See, that's still pretty good. So you see those long strands of fiberglass that's mixed in that? It's a pasty type of fiberglass resin with this long strands of fiberglass loose in there. They make another product that I don't have, that I'm not going to be using. It's called chopped fiberglass. It's the same as this, except the strands of fiberglass are not long. They're like 1/8 of an inch long. And so it spreads real smooth. It doesn't have hairy stuff, stringy stuff in it. But you'll see how that works when we use that. And this should be the same thing. I just didn't know I had any when I was ordering all of this. So that is basically what we got. And this is just the filler. It's real smooth top coat filler that we put on either over very minor body work jobs, or we put it over this stuff when we're done with this. This stuff here is also water resistant, so you use this on the lower sections of the body work where you're going to be getting a lot of water. This is fiberglass resin. It's a liquid. It comes out kind of let's say kind of a slightly greenish clear color, unless this one comes out different. That's what I'm used to seeing anyway. And then you mix it with this liquid watery like hardener, and it will kind of turn it purple. And you lay your fiberglass mat. You put this stuff in a plastic container, and then you lay your fiberglass mat in it. That's what this stuff is, fiberglass mat. These are used pieces that are just scraps that I acquired somewhere. I bought a new bag of it in case I run out. Anyway, you put this in the mat, or you put the mat stuff in this fiberglass, and then you lay it across your work. And so that's how you will be doing that, and you'll see how I do that. I'm going to mix up just a little dab of this, just for the heck of it, just to show you guys what it does, and also just to see how this old stuff that hasn't been used in a long time, just to see how it is going to work. So we're just going to make up a small dab and waste it. But it's not really waste, because I need to know if I can use this, or do I need to open up that new can. I should be using gloves. Since I'm going over to tools, this is a new box of gloves from Harbor Freight. I'm going to go on ahead and get a couple of these out. I only got one here. You got to blow these things up. So you can get in them. Got another brand of these somewhere around here. seem to go on a little easier. I think they might have a little powder dusting inside of them. It's my first time using the Harbor Freight gloves. Anyway, you just have to get a guess at how much to use. Okay, we got about half of a golf ball size here. It'd be a good idea to knead this stuff first, get all the air out of it, and then knead this a bit, because you don't know how long it's been sitting. You cannot let this stuff freeze. This hardener will go bad. It'll separate. You'll have water and solids, and they will never go back together again. So this stuff, can't leave it out where it'll freeze. Now, the hotter it is, the less hardener you need, and the faster you got to mix it. That's about the right amount for that. And then you just keep chopping it and spreading it. Until the color is uniform. If the color is not uniform, you are not mixed. Make sure you get all of it off of your spreader while you're mixing it, or else you'll have some on your spreader that's not mixed. Now I'm just going to let that sit on that for a minute while we go over the rest of this stuff, and you will see just how hard that stuff gets in a minute. And it'll get warm too while it's setting up. Nothing wrong with these gloves. I'm going to use them again. Okay, other tools that we're using. These are scrubbing pads. These are fine. This says ultra fine on here. I don't know if you can read it. It says ultra fine. That's for breaking the glaze off of your paint before you start working, so that you can paint. And these are, and you use them for a lot of things. You can use them in your kitchen for cleaning up stuff, and they're just like Scotch-Brite pads. These are also relatively fine, but not quite as fine as these. Everybody knows what these things are. Dust masks, gotta have that. Already got our gloves. Here's a new box of spreaders. We're probably not going to need these. I may have enough. I found enough from that are unused, and you can use these several times, maybe 4, 5, 6 times before they start getting where they're hard to use. And the 4-inch is what my favorite size is. You get them 2-inch, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's a new box of 4-inch spreaders from Amazon. Don't know what I paid for it. 50 pack. Start putting this stuff underneath so I got room. These are wet sanding blocks, or they also call it block sanding. You tear a regular sheet of sandpaper into 4 sections, and then each one of those sections fits on here just right when you're wet sanding with these. So I got 4 or 3 of those there. This is a sanding disc. It's a number 16. That's very, very coarse. That means 16 grains per inch, per lineal inch. That's pretty coarse paper there. Here's another sanding disc. Looks like this one's a 36. That's a little bit finer. We'll be using that on a grinder like this. Just to These are DA papers. DA means dual action. This is a dual action sander. It rotates and it also orbits in circles while it's rotating. It's an air sander. This one has to have sticky back papers on it. This one was before the Velcro came out. And so I got some sticky back papers here. And there's another roll of it here. These are 80 grit here. And this one, I don't know what grit this is. It's finer. It's a 360. This will be for finish work. Not on the paint, but on your body filler when you're coming close to the end of that. So yeah, that's your DA air sander. And we'll set these aside for later. This is a straight sander. It only goes one direction, or they call it a file, an air file. There's another nickname for it. That gets papers that clamp onto it. Here's some here. Well, these have sticky on them. These have sticky. If that sticky will come off, yeah, it does, because these are old. And so there's only a couple of these left. About out of those. These are the coarse ones. These do not have glue on them. These just clamp on to the ends. These are the coarse ones. That's what, 30s. I think these are 36s. So there's your air file. These are hand files. That's just for very carefully touching up and finishing up. Usually I don't have two with the same size paper on them. Usually one has a different paper than the other. But I don't know how that wound up happening like that. This is a new grinder that I have not used yet. This is also a DA. See how it kind of rotates at an oddball. So it does the orbital and that's got the 3-inch foot on it. And there's a 2-inch that goes on there as well. Here it is. And these have the Velcro pads. I had to order. All this stuff is new. I wanted some of these in a coarser grit, but I couldn't get them that way yet. This one's 2000. That's a real fine grit. And these are Velcro. This one is 800. We'll use these on the paint. But you can stick those on like that and very carefully work your paint with that. I like these to be electric because the air just sucks up so doggone much air that it actually uses probably 10 times more electric on the compressor than one that's just straight electric. These pads here come a whole bunch of different grits. Some of them are pretty coarse. I didn't get a package like that for the 3 size. The 3-inch, but the 2-inch size I have that. So I can put a lot of different sizes on that one. And that's just for getting into real tight areas, working around like it might be like working some of these little tight areas in here in these corners, getting as close to touching up like that as you can, or in between the rivets. One thing I did not cover yet is the glue gun that you use on this body work on these big trucks. Not for metal, but for this this composite fiber, how it glues together. That's how they glue this top half onto these fenders, and the other parts that are attached to it on the inside. So it's Comes with this pistol grip thing here, kind of like a caulking gun, because it is kind of an epoxy type of glue, and it mixes through this mixing tube on its way out. Here's an empty tube. This is a different brand, but the same product. And here's some extra mixing tubes. We won't be using this, but you can see that design inside there, how this swirls and mixes with itself all the way down to the end when it comes out. Now if you just need a very small amount, you don't use one of these tubes. You just spread it out, or squirt the two mixes out onto something, and you mix it up like you're mixing body filler instead of wasting a tube. But you use the tube when you need to run a long line and in some tricky areas and whatnot, where you'll have your uniform bead of glue spreading out where you need it to be. But if that's not the case, then don't waste one of these tubes that way. Just mix it by hand and spread it on like body filler. And then last is this wallpaper hanging knife for getting bubbles out from under wallpaper. I use this. I'll fold a piece of 2-inch tape right over that, 2-inch masking tape over that, and then I'll just, on a large flat panel, when I spread my body filler on there, and I'll take this and just very carefully wipe that on there, and that's the only thing I use that for. I think I pretty much covered most of the body tools that I'm going to be using, and then there's a few more for the paint. We'll get to that later. Here's what happened to this. That is very hard. It's hot in my fingers, and that is very hard, but it's still fresh, very fresh, so it's workable. But with those fibers in there, that will not crack and separate, so that's what that's good for. But I'm glad to know the stuff still works good. Now in a couple of hours, okay, right now this is workable to sand it down, but in a couple of hours this will be hard, and it would be extremely difficult or impossible to break. It'd be like trying to break a piece of fiberglass that thick.